For years, I've been simplifying my life, and I've realized that the biggest changes didn't come from what I added, but from what I stopped doing. So today, I want to share 15 normal things that I quit to simplify my life. These are everyday habits that many people consider normal, but that I stopped doing. Just a heads up, this isn't a manual for simplifying your life. Rather, it's a menu based on what worked for me. So feel free to pick and choose what sounds interesting and just ignore the rest. Drink alcohol at home. I love a glass of rich, full-bodied red wine. But when you drink at home, it's easy to fall into the habit of drinking a glass every single night, and sometimes more. Now, alcohol is fun in the moment, but it's essentially like borrowing energy from tomorrow. And in the morning, you have to pay interest on that energy loan. I also don't sleep as well when I drink, even if it's just one glass. I have more vivid dreams, I wake up with a dry mouth, and my sleep is just more restless. The truth is that alcohol just isn't good for you, period. The old idea that one glass of wine is fine or maybe even beneficial is a debunked myth. Like the antioxidants that you could get from a glass of wine, you can also get from eating grapes or blueberries, and they don't have the risks of alcohol. So now I only drink a glass of wine when I'm visiting family or eating in a restaurant. I don't drink alcohol at all. Check my phone first thing in the morning. When I worked as a corporate lawyer, reading and answering emails on my BlackBerry, there's not a BlackBerry, this is just a phone I'm using as a prop to make this video a bit more entertaining, I guess. Reading and answering emails on my BlackBerry was the last thing I would do before going to bed, and then the first thing I did upon waking, before I'd even wash my face or have my coffee. I felt like I had to. Now that I no longer work as a lawyer, I no longer check my emails or even check my phone first thing in the morning. What you do after waking up sets the tone for the day, and I don't want the theme of the day to be urgency and anxiety. Instead, I want to center myself. That's why I start my day with an hour-long block. Even on weekends, my first thought upon waking is to wash my face, get dressed, and be out the door within 10 minutes. It's a habit I don't even think about anymore. Walking daily is one of the healthiest habits you can adopt. I love moving my body first thing in the morning and breathing in the fresh air. It's such a peaceful way to start the day. In my life, nothing is important to justify checking my phone first thing in the morning. I still remember a time when there were no smartphones, and everyone seemed to do just fine without them. So answering emails can wait. And I don't need to see everything that's wrong in the world within minutes of waking up either. Speaking of the news, check the news daily. In the last couple of years, I've gone back and forth between periods where I check the news daily and times when I don't check the news at all. And right now, I'm on a streak again where I'm not checking the news. The late Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, I have one of his books here, he taught that we are like a garden containing good and bad seeds within us. And the question is, which seeds do you nurture? Now, when you nurture good seeds, the bad seeds naturally weaken. But it also works the other way around. And I feel checking the news daily is nurturing bad seeds of fear and anxiety. You know, when you turn on the news at night, the anchor will start by saying, "Good evening." But then will continue for 20 minutes or so telling you why it isn't one. As if the things that are wrong in the world are the only things worth sharing. I guess bad news sells. In journalism, there's the saying, if it bleeds, it leads. But just because that's how the news business works and that's how they make a profit, doesn't mean I need to passively subject myself to that on a daily basis. The common argument for checking the news daily is, I want to stay informed. Now, I get that, but I don't think you need to check the news daily to stay informed. I find that on streaks where I don't check the news at all, I'll still hear about the big things that are going on in the world from my girlfriend or from family. Also, how much do you really get to know when you check the news daily? How much are you actually really informed? Because a lot of the stuff that you see on the news, it lacks context. Well, many of those things we understand better a couple of weeks later, a couple of years later, even sometimes when, we have much more information about the specific event. But by that time, everyone has already moved on to what happened on that specific day. Plus, a lot of what's on the news isn't really important. Casualties of war are of a totally different magnitude than speculation about whether a football coach will be fired or not. But both are on the news. So I may get to a point where I selectively stay informed without immersing myself in the daily headlines. Maybe by checking The Economist World in Brief every week or maybe once a month. What I know for a fact is that I've quit checking the news several times now for a prolonged period, and each time it has really improved my mental health. And staying informed just isn't worth giving that up for. Buy souvenirs. I love traveling, visiting new countries, and exploring different cultures. And I cherish the memories I have of those trips. But one thing I don't cherish is the cheap souvenirs I used to take home from those trips. You know the kind, a bag with a city's name on it, a keychain, a mug, or a placemat with a painting on it, usually bought in a museum shop. When I bought these souvenirs, I guess it was my way of holding on to the experience. I was wowed by a painting or enamored by the architecture, the food, the colors of the country. However, minimalism made me realize that those souvenirs can't capture or preserve the essence of that experience. And over time, they just become meaningless items that take up space in the house. So I don't buy souvenirs anymore. I make an exception for something that eases the transition when I'm back home. And for me, that centers around food. So, for example, biscotti, those little hard almond biscuits that you can buy in Italy, dip in your coffee, or a good bottle of olive oil from Spain. Something to commemorate the amazing experience I just had. Always try to be productive. Productivity advice is all about getting things done, setting ambitious goals, reverse engineering how to get there, and then tackling them one by one. But productivity advice rarely addresses questions like what makes a good life, or why pursue this particular goal. By obsessing over how we can optimize our productivity, we risk losing sight of the forest for the trees, of seeing the bigger picture. People in old age never say, I wish I worked harder in my life. No, what they value is time spent with loved ones and listening to their heart and intuition. Yet these things are rarely discussed in productivity content. In 4,000 Weeks, Oliver Bergman writes that we will never have enough time to do everything we want. And we can't control the time we do have. Our plans are like a lasso thrown from the present around the future, reeling it back in, trying to control it. But all a plan is a present moment statement of intent. With no guarantee of even living to experience the next moment. Only when you can really come to terms with that, can you start living with intention. Now, I'm not saying don't set goals. I set goals. They give direction to my life. But the way we do things is just as important, if not more important, than the things we're trying to achieve. Hold on to things just in case. How many clothes do you have in your drawer that no longer fit, but you keep just in case you maybe lose 10 pounds in the future? Or maybe you have a fondue set that's just gathering dust in the back of a kitchen cabinet. And not to mention all the smaller items like cables, instruction manuals, or random kitchen gadgets. In my experience, the just-in-case items I kept took up valuable space and I'd only use them once. As a minimalist, I want to be intentional about the things I surround myself with, and these just-in-case items, they're really just clutter. And clutter is like that annoying roommate that doesn't pay rent or help with the household chores. I don't need that in my life. The minimalists have this 20-20 rule that I find useful. It basically means that if something costs under $20 and you can get it within 20 minutes of your home, don't bother keeping it around just in case. Now, by the way, if you're new to minimalism and you're interested in it, but you don't really know how to begin, you can download my free How to Get Started with Minimalism checklist in the description below. Keep up with trends. Trends come and go, so following them can be expensive because things go in and out of fashion all the time. There was a time I bought into trends. I would spend a lot of money on branded clothes, thinking they would make me more confident and impress others. But those days are long gone. I no longer care about the latest fashionable jeans or the newest gadget. In The Psychology of Money, there's a great book about personal finance that I recently read. Morgan Housel writes that when people see you drive in a sports car, they're not really looking at you. They're looking at the sports car, at the Lamborghini, and thinking, how cool would I look in that? He argues that spending money on luxury items to gain attention and admiration is a poor investment, because no one is as impressed by your fancy things as you are. Maybe it's different with clothes or gadgets, I'm not sure. I guess if you look really put together, that I could see how you get some admiration from that. But still, keeping up with the Jonases seems like a bad way to spend your money. As a minimalist and someone who lives frugally, I want to be intentional with my money. I'd rather spend my money on things that provide lasting value. Fulfillment comes from within, not from the admiring look from family, friends, or strangers even. You earn goodwill through your actions and integrity. Humility, kindness, and empathy will earn you more respect than any trendy item ever will. So keeping up with the trends or showing off what I own just feels meaningless. It just seems empty to me. Use my phone as a hobby. Phone isn't a hobby. It's just passive consumption. A hobby isn't just something you do for enjoyment, it's also something that challenges you, it helps you build a new skill, or it lets you create something. Now, unless you count swiping your thumb up as a skill, using my phone rarely leaves me with a sense of accomplishment. Now, a phone can be a tool for a hobby, like watching tutorials to get better at playing guitar, or maybe use an app to keep score while you're playing a board game. But the phone itself, it's not a hobby. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because chances are you're watching this video on your phone right now, right? So how often do you use your phone when you feel bored? Let me know by leaving a comment below. Complain about things I can't change. Most things are outside of my control, so complaining about them is just a waste of energy. It doesn't change anything and it keeps me stuck in frustration. When you complain about what's beyond your control, you give it power over you. When I complain, it just never puts me in a good mental place. It makes me negative and drains my energy. Also, people who complain a lot aren't pleasant to be around, and I don't want to be that person. So I'd much rather focus on things that I can control. My mindset, my actions, and how I react to things. That doesn't mean I ignore problems that are outside of my control, but I don't see how complaining about them changes anything. All it will do is make me a miserable person, and I don't want that. So I'd rather put my time and energy where it can really make a difference. Look busy. Looking busy is not the same as being productive. Busyness is the appearance of productivity, but it doesn't mean you're actually getting anything done, or that you're doing the right things, the things that move the needle. Maybe you can relate to this. It's easy for me to fill my days with things that feel like work, like endless emails back and forth, meetings, administrative tasks, that don't contribute to moving my business forward. In different jobs I've had throughout my life, I've encountered colleagues who mastered the art of looking busy. The computer was on, they were typing or doing something that looked like work, but they got very little done. They were just biding their time, waiting until the end of the day so they could check out and collect their paycheck. For someone with ambition and drive like me, that's killing. And sometimes it meant that I had to work harder to make up for their lack of effort. Like I once worked for a SaaS company and part of my job was to answer customer support emails. I had a colleague who would always log on just a little bit earlier than the rest of the team, pick out the easiest emails that only required like a one-sentence templated email to answer, and then leave all the hard questions for team members like me. Thanks a lot. Other times, it didn't necessarily mean I had to do that work, but it did affect the team culture when some team members cut corners left and right and seemed to be getting away with it. That's just unmotivating and would eventually wear me down. It's like Peter Gibbons said in Office Space, one of my favorite movies, when he's talking to the two Bobs.
That's my only real motivation, is not to be hassled. That and the fear of losing my job, but you know, Bob, that'll only make someone work just hard enough not to get fired.
That looks really good.
It's hot.
Well, that's delicious better. I don't want to feel that way about my work. That's one reason why I love being self-employed and building this YouTube channel. I work hard because any results I achieve are mine. And the flip side is also true. If I don't do the work, it doesn't get done. There's no way around it, like I can't get away with looking busy. But I'm okay with that. Wish I lived somewhere else. When I worked as a corporate lawyer, we would always receive Christmas cards from other law firms. There was always this one card from this law firm based in Mauritius. I don't know why they sent it to us. I don't think anyone in my team worked with them or had worked with them in the past. And the cover of that card had these beautiful pictures. Beach, ocean, sun, it was very colorful. And meanwhile, this was December, right? Like it was rainy and gray, just gloomy in the Netherlands. I was like, why are they sending this postcard? It's just to show off. Working and living on a tropical island seemed like a dream. But then fast forward to 2013, when I quit my job to travel Southeast Asia for 1 year. I wanted to reflect on my career so far. I'd left law because of my headaches. I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue, and I really wanted to think about what's next. So I went to a couple of countries, but I ended up kind of getting stuck on Koh Phangan, which is a tropical island in Thailand. And I ended up living there for a whole year. At the time, it was a lot cheaper than living in the Netherlands, so my savings lasted a lot longer than I thought they would. And at first it was great. I mean, the sunshine, the beach, I had a motorbike, I loved just riding over the island. I was doing a lot of yoga and meditation. But after a year, I left the island and moved to a city. What had drawn me to the island initially had now become normal, and I felt held back by the limitations of living on an island. I was starting my own business, and this is 10 years ago. I think it's different now. But at the time, there was no place to work from. There was also no community of people that were making money online. Food options were limited. Half of the year, it was very hot, and I had no air conditioning. There were some months where it rained nonstop. There were mosquitoes everywhere, ants were living in my laptop, and everyone around me was getting dengue fever. I'm sharing this because it's easy to romanticize other places, imagining that life would be better, easier, or more exciting if only you were there instead of here. But I've realized that every place has its own challenges, and wherever you go, you bring yourself, your mindset, your habits, and your struggles. So now I live in Europe again. It's not perfect, but for the phase that I'm at in my life, it's where I want to be, with its pros and cons. Stay up late. A highly ambitious workaholic might say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, I'd rather sleep tonight and get a good 8 hours of it. Rest is important. I go to bed around 11 p.m., sometimes even earlier. When I was in my 20s, I looked forward to going out at night to a bar. Now I look forward to going to sleep at night. So the 20-year-old version of myself would probably be horrified hearing me say that. I don't know what to say. I guess I've grown older, wiser, and yes, also more boring. But if looking forward to going to sleep at night is boring, I don't care. Because if I don't sleep well, I feel terrible, no matter what else is going on in my life. And I also remember the many mornings I was hungover in my 20s, and I don't miss those one bit. One thing I love about no longer working as a corporate lawyer is that I don't have to set an alarm to wake up. And the irony is that I still wake up every morning between 7 and 8 a.m. naturally. And I think it's because I'm no longer as stressed or as wired from too much coffee every day anymore. Get my self-worth from my job. This was a hard one for me. Even though I wouldn't admit it at the time, I secretly took pride in saying I am a lawyer when I introduced myself, like I had finally arrived in life. So when I left that job over a decade ago, because I had non-stop headaches for almost 1.5 years, I had a hard time redefining myself. I didn't want to go back to law, but if I wasn't a lawyer, who was I? But I've since realized that my past doesn't define my future. I'm grateful for the experience, but I've moved on to the next phase of my life. I make a lot less money, but minimalism has taught me how to live with less, and I'm much happier now. I now no longer let work define me, because life is about so much more than work. Spend my income every month because I deserve it. We never had much money growing up, and when I was a student, I had very little as well. Then when I started working as a lawyer, I made decent money. Nothing like the salaries lawyers get in New York or London, but I made more money than my dad, which was actually a bit awkward. So I started spending, at first on things I actually needed, like suits, buttoned shirts, ties, and furniture for my apartment. But I also fell into lifestyle inflation. I ate out more, I bought way more books than I had time to read, I bought branded clothes and made impulse purchases like kitesurfing gear and an Xbox that I barely used. I had no problem spending most of my salary because I felt I had job security, and in my mind, if I wasn't spending most of what was coming in, how could I justify putting in all those hours at work? I was also completely clueless about investing. It wasn't something I was taught growing up or in school. Now there's all these podcasts, YouTube channels, and books about it. And maybe back then there were books about it, but they just weren't on my radar. It wasn't something I discussed with friends or family or colleagues even. But it is what it is. The best time to hit that subscribe button is as early as possible. But the second best time is today. And the same goes for being smart with your money. Now I'm much more intentional about how I spend, which comes in handy because, unfortunately, I'm no longer making anything close to a lawyer's salary. Say yes when I want to say no. In the moment, saying yes is often easier. We say it because it feels uncomfortable to say no, not because we genuinely want to say yes. We don't want to be seen as unhelpful, arrogant, or rude even. You and I were hardwired to want to be liked. Some people are even people pleasers who feel guilty when they say no. But author James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, points out that yes and no are of completely different magnitude of commitment. When you say no, you're only saying no to one option. But when you say yes, you say no to every other option. So when you say yes too often, it's easy to get overwhelmed. especially if it goes at the expense of things you value, like family time, pursuing your interests, or living more slowly. I used to be much more of a yes person, but I realized that if I want to have more control over my time, I need to master the art of saying no. Because when you say no here, you say yes here, to yourself. If you're a people pleaser and struggling with this, I made a whole video on it in which I shared 3 not so well known actionable tips on how to say no and set boundaries without feeling guilty or offending anyone. You can check it out right here. So thanks for watching. I hope you got some value out of it. Let me know in the comments and I'd love to see you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.